Hello, this is Ukrinform, and in our studio today we have British lawyer Jason McCue. Hello, and thank you for being with us today.
Pleasure.
Today we will talk about lawfare, a system of measures aimed at exerting maximum pressure on Russia and its war actors in the legal field, achieving justice, accountability for all violators of international law, and compensation for victims. So please tell us, what is the essence of the program you're promoting on domestication of Ukrainian court cases brought against those contributing to Russia's war effort in the UK courts? How promising you think this initiative may be?
The initiative is really promising, put simply. And what it's there for, why it's there for Ukrainians, is because there's accountability gaps. The first accountability gap is that certain members of the Russian war machine, the private sector, the thing that keeps the kleptocracy alive, that keeps their war economy going through its sanction busting, it is getting away scot-free. It's not being prosecuted, it's not being sued in any format. And of course, these are the people that are keeping it going. And we've got to try and find litigation and prosecutions around the world to start making it accountable. The second reason for this domestication initiative is that sometimes the international justice system, which has been created since 1945, has gaps. And for Ukraine, there's certain gaps. You know about them, the special tribunal on the crime of aggression. You need something new to be able to deal with the gap in the system. But if you take many of these issues of reparations and the Russian private sector war machine, again, none of them are going to be prosecuted in the ICC. The crimes don't cover them. They're not leadership of the Russian state. So they're going to walk away, and yet they're responsible. They're as responsible as any other aspect of the Russian war machine for the heinous crimes that have been committed. So we have created a program of what is known as civil society lawfare to make these private sector Russian corporates and individuals and their oligarchs accountable for the crimes. Those cases rely on domestic courts all over the world. But there's another angle to it, and that is using the Ukraine civil law system. In Ukraine, you've got great judges, you've got great courts. They can bring judgments and damages, compensation claims against the Russian private sector. The problem is, when you get that judgment now in Ukraine, there's no money here, no Russian money for you to make it valuable, so it's an ornament on the shelf. It's a Pyrrhic victory. It's important because it's justice, but you can't enforce it. Domestication initiative is going to take sample Ukrainian cases and use the jurisdictional hub of the UK, which is one of the international hubs for domestication of foreign judgments. We're going to convert it into a UK judgment and use that to enforce against defendants' assets, not just in the UK, but in the EU and the US. Hence, those hundreds of billions of sanctioned private sector assets in the West, which are vulnerable. And the idea is we will set a roadmap for Ukrainians to be able to follow.
So what are we talking about? How much assets of Russian private sector is available now in the UK since the invasion? So
in the UK, you've got about, I think the latest count is it fluctuates all the time, around 17 billion. But globally, look at the global figures. You've got 240 billion, I think, of Russian state assets. It's probably more than that. Most of that in the Euroclear system. But what dwarfs it for the figures of, this is where they say there's 600 billion frozen around the world. The difference between that is the private sector that has been sanctioned of Russia. Now, at the moment, there isn't enough focus and enough effort for Ukrainians on that money and how to get it back legally using the rule of law. That's what this lawfare program does, and what the domestication initiative within it is going to help do, and set a roadmap that people can follow and bring cases. One more technical thing to clarify. Ukraine, together with partners, is developing an international compensatory mechanism to make Russia pay reparations, right? And one of the elements of which is the launch in The Hague of the International Register of Damage caused by Russian aggression against Ukraine.
In total, up to 8 million applications are expected to be filed within that program. How will your program fit in with the government's efforts to this end?
So, it is quite normal in conflict and post-conflict circumstances to set up a reparations commission, mechanism and a fund. That's what this register of damages is part of, and it's good. The elements are there. It needs a fund because you need money, and to do that you've got to confiscate. But what they're talking about, all these discussions are about focusing on that 240 billion of Russian state assets, not the private sector assets. It's not them. And that is where you use your theory of law on countermeasures to be able to confiscate that money and put it in. There's a problem. The problem with any reparations commission is that they take a long time. They have to be legally compatible. And like everything on the international level, it's open to real politics. The great thing about going for the private sector Russian assets, and the great thing about lawfare, it's depoliticized. You're in domestic courts where politics don't come into it. It's about legal rights. And that gives you something a Ukrainian can hold on to and not worry about the politics of something.
And so you say this also gives you a better pace?
It's a better pace. I mean, undoubtedly, the process of domestication, which is 3 to 9 months, is a lot quicker than a commission on reparations. The Commission on Reparations for Iraq, for instance, was, I think, 10 years in the making. And, you know, at the end of it, families who had lost one of their loved ones, one of the parents' incomers, were getting awards of $4,600. That's not a lot. I'm sorry, Ukrainians who have lost their family members deserve proper compensation, which should be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, because that is the harm that's been caused to you. And the problem why those amounts sound small that have been in previous ones, like the Iraq one, for instance, is because the pot of money is not infinite. It's the bit that they have negotiated with the bad actors that can be put into it, or in this case, what they confiscate. So at the most, there's going to be 240 billion. Sounds a lot, but hold on, you've got to pay for your schools to be rebuilt, your hospitals to be rebuilt, your train systems, your nuclear facilities to be rebuilt. Once you've started spending that, what's left for regular lady and man on the street who have lost their home, lost their car? It's much smaller amounts. Now, the great thing about the lawfare is, what I'm suggesting is this, it runs in parallel with the Reparations Commission. Of course, you can go for both. It sets off in law. If you got $10,000 from the Reparations Commission, for instance, and you were awarded, and you received that, and then you were awarded 100,000, then you'd only get 90 under the case. That's how the law works. You can't double dip. So what we're doing is increasing the pot, looking at money which otherwise isn't targeted, and finding a faster method for Ukrainians to get what they deserve. That's justice.
Great. Well, speaking of average Ukrainians, can you update us about the case that you piloted, you launched back in 2022, targeting the notorious Wagner Group in London, where a group of Ukrainians were to file a class action suit against this mercenary company and its leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who has been dead, presumably, for a while. Is there any progress in that case? And another question, in follow-up, have any Ukrainians living in other countries filed similar suits to this end?
So to answer the first question, we're where we have been for the preceding, I think it's 18 months now. We're in a position of needing to raise finance to go to the next stage, because we want to, we don't want the case just to be for a small handful of people. We did that to make a show against Russia, to show them that there was a way for Ukrainians could see that there were efforts. We need to bring more people on board. We need to expand it. There are defendants that I want to target in that, which we can, such as the Russian Orthodox Church and many individual private banks in Russia, and we're going to come for them. Now, to do that, we need resource. Not resource so then us lawyers can make profits and have a sports car. I'm not on about that. I'm on about the basic stuff so that people can work, pro bono and low bono, with all the experts we need in evidence gathering to be able to expand that case into the dynamic piece of lawfare it could be for your country. So we're very hopeful. There's moves afoot of people who are interested in funding it. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I think at the end of the day, we will find the right people or the right government, and it will happen. In the interim, we're putting together more cases and seeking to gain finance in different ways for them. For instance, I'm here for the Yes conference. Why? Because there's a load of rich people there. I'm going to be running after them going, sponsor this case for the kidnapped children, sponsor this case against people injured from drones. Because these cases have impact. They have impact. They work. The Russians, it bothers them because they know it works. I've been doing this for 30 odd years, and lawyers in America, we know what we're doing. I've taken money, I've taken billions of dollars off terrorist groups. This concept works. You just got to put the effort into it.
You mentioned two interesting things in answering that question. First of all, tying the Russian Orthodox Church to the Wagner Group and the Russian, probably war machine in general. And you mentioned the abductions of Ukrainian children. First of all, do you work personally still on any cases of Ukrainian children being abducted by Russia? And of course, how exactly can you detail how you see Russian Orthodox Church being connected, affiliated, and contributing to the Russian war machine?
Let me start, if I may, with the Russian Orthodox Church.
Sure.
Because it's a church doesn't mean it should be able to get away with murder, right? It needs to be held accountable as much as the papacy had to be held accountable for child, the malicious children's stuff that happened around the world over the periods. The Russian Orthodox Church provided training facilities to groups like Wagner. Guilty. That is aiding and abetting war criminals and terrorists. That's punishable under law. No problem on the Ukrainian church and suing them for that. Secondly, on the children, they were involved in the kidnapping of the children. Notice I used the word kidnapping or abduction, which are the proper legal terms for what happened to your children that were snatched by the Russian state. It's not deportation. Yes, it is a deportation, but it's not just. Deportation is humanitarian law's definition. But these children have been stripped of their identity. They're being brainwashed. They've lost their data. They've been forcibly evicted. Sorry, but that's getting into right to liberty under the human rights legislation, and I strongly believe and will be pleading genocide. It's an act of genocide. So the Russian Orthodox Church is going to have those cases coming at them on those claims, those actual prosecutions. It's going to be on those subjects. Now, that's them. You asked something else and I forgot.
Yeah, you mentioned the abductions. Are you working on any of those cases?
Yes, so there's two things we're doing. We feel that the kidnapped children really needs the spotlight. We think whether it was 5 children or 1,000 children or 10,000 children, it doesn't matter. If it was 1, this needs a spotlight on it. It is heinous, the kidnapping of children in war. It is a crime. It is a breach of human rights. It is a genocide, as well as a breach of humanitarian law. Who else did that, by the way? Do you know who else did it? Boko Haram. They kidnapped children. Who else? The Lord's Army. These were terrorist criminal organizations which we rightly said were kidnappers. That is exactly what Russia's done. They are no different than Boko Haram. And I think it's very important that a case is brought to prove that point in a court of law and to get a verdict. The case we will be bringing will also seek to do a declaration of the court, of the European Court of Justice. We want a declaration which underpins a mandate of the rights for those children, which I can tell you, our campaigners are going to nail on every door of the Russian Orthodox Church in Western countries, which demands those children are brought back safely, are compensated, their health is looked after, their welfare, etc. And it will all be pleaded out, and we'll get a declaration of the European Court. We're also going to seek damages against the Russian Federation for the kidnapping. And I'm here to try and raise money at the Yes conference for this case, and to meet a number of families who have suffered their children, which I'm sure you've met many more than me, to talk to them about it and to talk about what we can do on this.
Given all that you said, the picture is rather gloomy as we speak about the international justice system. We see how Russia has been deliberately discrediting the international justice bodies, trying to corrode this entire international legal system, snubbing international court decisions, setting up the situations where those international legal bodies are compromised. Do you think any of that needs to change? What I mean is maybe some parts of the system, or maybe some international legal norms that have been unchanged for decades. Given the ongoing war in Ukraine, given everything that's Russia been doing, do you feel that there is a need for change?
So this is sort of fundamental to my beliefs in my life. I don't pray to God, right? I look at concepts of law and I believe in rule of law. These are the things that touch me. These are the things that trouble me. What Russia has done is just trodden and stamped and spat on rule of law. It's done it constantly now. It doesn't give a shit about human rights, that country, even of its own people, right? Let alone the Ukrainians that it faces in the battles and when it's during its invasion. Yes, Russia must be forced to get back in line with the rule of law. It's seminal. It's why I'm putting in what little effort I'm doing and trying to help Ukraine. I didn't know Ukrainians, but what I do understand about is the rule of law, and it's on your side. And that's why I think myself and other lawyers who are obsessed with it like a religion on these legal principles are all coming to Ukraine, trying to help in any way we can.
Well, now it's 2024, and back in 2022, as I remember from our press, in an interview with Ukraine's Zerkalo Tizhnya, you said you want to just become a pain in the for Prigozhin and Vladimir Putin. Well, now Prigozhin is presumably dead.
Yeah.
Putin is still out there. So do you feel you have succeeded in becoming one for Putin?
Well, I perhaps concentrate my being a pain in the Putin now rather than having to share it with Prigozhin. So, what I would say, if you're looking for whether I am being a pain in Putin personally sanctioned me. So I reckon he must be a little pissed off because he understands, or his people around him understand the power of lawfare and how it can take their assets. Once you start taking the assets of a kleptocracy, it crumbles. So we're an existential threat. If we can get this program going and get more people around the world and Ukrainian lawyers bringing these kind of cases, Putin's frightened. And you know, look, he can do what he wants. It shows his disdain for human rights. You know, I can't go to Russia, right? He's banned me. So what? I mean, if I open an office, I can't open a law office there, but I'm a human rights lawyer, right? So I don't imagine much work there. I'd probably be really poor because they don't give a shit about human rights. So that's his big deal. His response is to do that. Let him come into the courtrooms. Let him fight in the courtrooms. Bring it on, you know, and let's get all these lawyers out there and bring actions and let's get justice.
Yeah, so I believe that most irritation he can get is when his cronies start losing their money.
It is, and it's the same. We did exactly the same with rogue regimes and terrorism in the past. Once you get the enablers, the financial facilitators, it all crumbles. And that's the model. We're not reinventing the wheel here. We're saying do it on Russia. This is the perfect example of where it can be done and be effective. And yeah, he'll moan, yeah, you know what? There's disinformation campaigns on us will come out. People will try and malign us. We know what their tactics will be, you know? I think we're all, you know, the legal team on this and the NGOs and charities that support us, like Payback for Ukraine, Jaffa, who are all involved with Pittsburgh Law School, Keele University. They're all involved because they believe in rule of law. They know this justice works, and they're all going to put an effort in. And I'm hoping to get, students. I've come here to meet with your university here and try and see if we can get some law students involved in these projects and helping Ukraine in that way through lawfare. That's how, using rule of law, we change the direction of this. We become a pain in the ass to Russia, and Russia stops its nonsense and starts behaving again. Till you take the money, they're going to misbehave.
Well, thank you, Jason. Thank you for being with us here today, and I hope you raise enough funds and rally enough people for your really huge effort. And good luck to you.
Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
This is Jason McCue at Ukrinform.